is Alex Londo. I'm the EMA coordinator in Shelby County.
Roger Beeson, Fire Chief here, and I represent the City of Harlan on this advisory council.
Tim Blum, I'm with Irwin Fire and Rescue. I'm their chief. I'm also sit as the Shelby County Emergency Management Association's president. Then I also sit on the Shelby County Executive Board for the EMA. And then I sit on this advisory council board.
Bryce Shaven, representing the supervisors.
Jenny Lefevre, Emergency Department Manager.
Karen Schluter, can't even say my last name right today. Karen Schluter, City Council for Shelby. I sit on the Executive Committee for the EMS and on this board as well.
Jordan Sanders is an EMA coordinator and EMS services for Shelby.
Janice Ball, Mayor of Burling, and representing the small towns of Shelby County.
So again, the reason why we're here tonight, we're going to talk about EMS and the vote that's coming up on November 7th to classify EMS as essential in Shelby County. Just kind of how we got here. So this group plus several others started meeting about 2 years ago because we found out that medevac is going to retire, and when they retire, it's going to leave us without a guaranteed response for ALS coverage in the county. So we started meeting to see how we could plan for that and how we could make EMS a success moving forward. We started meeting about 2 years ago, about monthly, and then we picked it up to a couple times a month, and now we're back to being monthly again. We went to the Board of Supervisors earlier this year, and they adopted a resolution to allow EMS to go to the ballot, or EMS as an essential service to go to the ballot, and formed the EMS Advisory Committee, which is made up of all people pretty much sitting at this table. And we meet once a month, and our goal is twice a month now, our goal is to figure out what the tax dollars should be to make EMS a success in Shelby County. And then also once a year, if this does pass, we have to give a report to the Board of Supervisors of how the tax money was used and what it was used for. So I'll let Tim kind of talk about the plan on what we're going to do.
So like Alex said, we've been meeting several times, and with the state, what they put into law is that you can tax up to 75 cents per thousand, and then you can have a 1% surcharge tax on state income tax. So with those two, roughly we bring in about 720,000 with the 75 cents per thousand, and we bring in about 120,000 with the 1% surtax on state income tax. And as a lot of people on this board been meeting in Shelby County with medevac, they've done a great job over the years, and we found out we've gotten by really, really cheap with it over the years, and they've done a great job. And now when it comes time to replace it, it's going to get more expensive because 911 just ain't cheap to fund. But with that, we're looking at a budget of roughly about 1.2 million, and so to make up that difference, there would still be billing that could be billed towards insurance, and we work with medevac very closely. The hospital's been very involved with this. They've had their financial person help us out with the budget. They've had their advertising person help out with the advertising of it for us. They've been very involved, along with everybody else that's been in here. And what we've had is the right players at the table for this, I believe. As a volunteer in the county, I've been a volunteer for Irwin squads for the past 26 years. And back in 1996 when I started, we had 18 first responders and EMTs in Irwin when I started. Now we're down to 4. So the volunteering just keeps getting less and less every year, and we need to find a way to help that out. So medevac has always provided an ALS service in this county, and once they retire, there's not going to be that ALS service anymore, and we have to find out a way to replace it. And what we've come up with is we're looking at staffing 2 24/7 shifts of EMT and a paramedic on a shift. And 2 of them, they'd be based out of Harlan that operate basically almost similar to the way it does now. There's some differences in it than the way it is now, but it's going to be pretty similar. The volunteers, nothing with volunteers will change with this. What we're also looking at and what the Board of Supervisors wants us to do is give more money back to the volunteers to help them out. So we've earmarked about $90,000 that we're going volunteers. And we haven't just sat down to discuss how that's gonna be divvied out for sure. But probably the fairest way to do that is probably on a call volume basis. And we also want to, with developing this countywide EMS, we want to bring all the departments together and be more unified. We want to be able to do some group buying power, so when we buy supplies and stuff, we can buy supplies for the volunteer units so they don't have to buy their own supplies. We can, if with supplies, you have expiration dates on supplies, and with us volunteers, sometimes we don't use them and we have to waste supplies. Hopefully with this, we can move different supplies around to different people in the county that use them faster, and we won't waste as much in supplies. In my opinion, when the 911 call comes in, it comes in and the volunteers respond. We go out and we call somebody, and we cheer a lot of times, we cheer with medevac. We're bringing them to the hospital here in Harlan a lot of times. And that 911 call doesn't stop there. That 911 call, if somebody's having a heart attack or a STEMI or something and they need advanced more care than what the Harlan Hospital can give them, they need to go down to the Omaha or Council Bluffs where they can get into where they can need to. And probably about 3 to 4 months ago when we had somebody that was having a STEMI, which is a heart attack, and we were called, and luckily that night, all 4 of us were around. We got there, we attached the monitor, we took a picture of what was going on because we knew what was going on. We sent that picture to the ER in Harlan. We cheered with medevac right outside everyone. We got that person to the Harlan Hospital, and they actually had to cardiovert that person once in the Harlan Hospital, and within 27 minutes, that person was going down to the city to get a stent put in, and they had that put in with no complications. And to me, that's the best care that we can provide with the best tax value dollar in Shelby County. And that's our goal out of this, is to have the best care we can for the tax value that we have. And so for me, that 911 call didn't end until that person got down to Omaha and had the surgery that they had and was done. And we've looked at several different options to this. We looked at basing it out of the hospital. We looked at hiring, contracting somebody else to come in. And we feel that the best way to do it is to do it in county. We can have more control over it, and we can get better care out of it, we believe. And Jenny, from working at the hospital, she can attest to this, but in looking into this, we've found out, at different hospitals, sometimes there's patients waiting 2 or 3 hours to get transferred to that next level of care, and we don't want that to happen. We want the best care that we can give the people of Shelby County for the best tax value base. And that's our goal out of this whole thing. And the timeline of it is, right now we're doing the town hall meetings, we're doing an advertising push through the radios, through the city and FMCTC, the Deep Movie Theater, and we're also putting out yard signs. This vote goes to vote on November 7th. It'll be on the general election ballot, and it'll be up to the people of Shelby County to see if we want this or not. And if it passes and it goes through, we won't see any of the tax money come in until the middle of 2024. So once the middle of 2024 happens, we hire a supervisor and start mapping the whole thing out. And then once more tax money comes in, start building that. And what we're looking at is Shelby County right now, the ambulance commission owns two of the ambulances that sit down there that medevac have. We already own those 2. Medevac's got a 3rd for a spare. We're looking at buying that 3rd for a spare. We're looking at the purchase of their building. We'd have to do a little bit of renovating for living quarters in it better, because these people will be there 24/7. But this is what we're looking at, and this is what our goal is.
By the way, good job there.
Thank you.
Tim does a good job of explaining this. He's done it several times, so he's got it all memorized. We're looking at having a crew of about 13 people. So that would be a supervisor and 6 EMTs and 6 paramedics. And again, to go a little further on what Tim said about the buying power, we would have this central office buy all the supplies with expiration dates. And if any squad uses any supplies on call, they would just get their squad restocked, and the central office would do all the purchasing. They would also help out and do all the billing So that way it would take that burden off of the volunteer squads because, that's very time consuming also. Not only to do their reports, but then to follow up if you're gonna do any type of billing. So it takes a lot of the burden off of the folks that are volunteering their time, and they can get back to work at their jobs much quicker.
One thing I did forget to mention that this isn't a one-time vote and done. Every 15 years this has to be voted on again. So that's part of it, what the state put in place. And also, when we do go to the ballots, we need 60% of the people voting to vote yes for it to make it pass.
Tim talked a little bit about transfers, and I just wanted to talk a little bit more about that. So transfers out of MERTU, we see about 500 patients a month in the emergency department. We transfer about 20, sometimes 30 patients out, just depending on the month. And that is where the revenue really is going to come from for this service, is the transfers out of MERTU to other facilities. So we really wanted to keep that with the county program so that those revenues could come back to the county to help support the EMS program.
You all covered everything so well.
As Alex attested, we started this thing about 2 years ago. And back in May is when we had to have 3 hearings with Board of Supervisors just to get this on the ballot. So if this does not pass in November, we'll have started all over again next year and have 3 more hearings before the Board of Supervisors just to get it on another ballot. So we're looking at another year before we can even vote on it again if it doesn't pass this year. And with medevac retiring, that puts us in a big pinch. So, I mean, it's going to be left up to the volunteers to cover stuff once if this doesn't pass and medevac retires. And that's going to put a lot more burden on the volunteers.
Did you mention their contract?
Yeah, their contract is up in 2026. So that's when we hope to have this thing up and out the door running. So when they retire, we're taking over and it's flawless. I'm taking over.
So just to kind of emphasize what Tim said, if this vote does not pass and it's left solely up to the volunteers, I think everybody knows volunteerism is down, not just in Shelby County, not just in Iowa, but across the whole nation. So not only would this have an increased burden on the volunteers, it would also increase response times. Coming from the 911 side, I can tell you that it takes about 35 minutes for medevac to drive down to the southern part of the county in some places, and that's long enough to be on a 911 call with someone. Not even longer if you have to have a volunteer response from even further away because you can't staff a squad. And that's what we're in right now. A lot of people don't work in smaller towns throughout the day, so they have little to no day coverage. Shelby and Elkhorn have hired somebody to help cover day coverage, but a lot of towns haven't done that. Again, if this does not pass, it will all be on the volunteers to respond to these calls, 911 calls, and another private contractor or someone to do a transfer out of the hospital, and it could be 2, 3, 4 hours before you're getting to the higher level of care. And that's what we're trying to avoid here in Shelby County, is having our response times increase.
To kind of give you another perspective of it, there's 48 volunteers, EMTs in this county. So that puts us 1 for every 240 people in this county. Just to kind of put that in a little bit of perspective.
And the average age is 50.
Yeah, the average age is 50. And if anybody would like to support this and want a yard sign put in their yard in the back corner out there on the counter, there is a sign-up sheet. If you would like us to come put a yard sign in your yard, we'll come put it in there, and then we'll pick it up once the vote's over. Because, like I say, every 15 years, this has to be voted on again.
I think Alex had some examples of what it would cost.
So there are sheets in the back that have these numbers in there. along with just some other informational stuff in there. Let me try to get to it. So again, with the 75 cents per thousand, we took a $185,000 assessed value of home. With the rollbacks, that brings it to about $100,000 that you would be taxed on. So you would roughly be $75 a year or $6 a month. And then for a 40, we did some farm ground too. If you own, let's say 40 acres of farm ground and it's assessed at $65,000, the taxable rate after rollbacks would be $58,000, and you would owe roughly $43 a year or $1 an acre. And then for a commercial business with land and improvements, say it's a $300,000 assessed value, with rollbacks it would be $272,000, and then the EMS tax that would be $204 a year or $17 a month for the 75 cents, and then the 1% is on your state income tax. That would be 1% of that. So again, those examples are in the back, but we just kind of took some rough numbers and so what it would be.
And back when at the beginning of the year, when we started meeting monthly, this advisory council, we've been, all our minutes and everything are housed on the Shelby County website. So if you go to the Shelby County website, go to Departments tab, and go down there, and there'll be an EMS advisory council. All our minutes are underneath there, any of the advertising stuff that we have, the tax evaluations that we have are on there. That's where we've been housing everything. Our meetings have been at 7 a.m. on the third Thursday of the month. So if anybody wants to come sit in on them, they sure can. They're public meetings. We have a question in the back.
So if it does not pass and it has to go to another ballot, are you going to bring it to the ballot with the same funding plan? Are you going to change the funding plan? 'Cause I mean, people may reject it just because of the way it's being funded.
Right, and that's something that we'll have to go back to the drawing board and see if it was because of the amount of tax funding. But I can tell you from what we're seeing for billing and what you can receive from billing, because we run about 1,200-ish calls a year between patient transfers and 911 calls. So with the amount of money you get from that, it would take the full 75 cents to even be able to run it out of the county. Now, the tax or all the voting people say that they don't like paying that much, then we would have to figure out a way to make EMS a success with a lesser tax dollar. But there wouldn't be a way to house it within the county for less than what we have now to start it out with anyway.
And there's no other way to fund it other than this?
Would a sales tax, I mean,
Yeah,
is that a possibility?
by code, this is the only way we can tax for it.
It's the only way the state will allow you to
Yes.
tax for
Yeah.
it. All right,
So the-
that's good information to
The
know.
code is, if you want to look it up, it's Iowa Code 422D. It says that you can use, these are the only two mechanisms that they can. I know that after some conversations with people at Farm Bureau and some other counties, there may be a legislative change on what you can use to tax and adding more options. And that's definitely something that we would look at if to take some money off the property tax if we're able to. But unfortunately, right now, we're using what we're given to tax with.
You should make that very well known, because that's very good information to know, that there's not another option.
When the governor declared EMS in the state of Iowa to be an essential service,
I would agree.
which was great that she did that, but no funding came with it. But parameters have been set for funding of where you can get that money from.
Did I understand that your goal is you're going to purchase the existing, medevac? Is that what you're planning to do?
Yes, that's what we're planning.
Who will
Yeah.
determine what the fair value of that is, of what you should pay for it?
We'll have the building assessed.
Okay.
Yeah. Earlier, we mentioned 2 of the squads are owned by the Ambulance Commission. So the Ambulance Commission gets its funding from the hospital, the city of Harlan, and the county supervisors. That ambulance commission pays a fee to medevac to subsidize their contract of just over $300,000. Okay? So this 75 cents will generate about $720,000. So you're already paying through your taxes that you currently pay today, you're funding the ambulance commission. And so that will end up going away, and then this reorganized 75 cents will generate 720,000. So it's not like it's a whole new 720,000 coming. The public is already paying a portion of that today with the structure that we have with the current ambulance commission. Does that make sense? Okay.
I did have one other question, I'm sorry. Medevac, as a private business, they were making a profit off of it, which is reasonable, acceptable. So will the goal of the county ambulance service, were they going to be hoping to make a profit? I mean, how are they going to determine how much is?
As a government agency, you're just going to balance the budget. We're going to start out at 75 cents because we're going to have some upfront cost to get going. But as the budget goes on and we get a good handle on our reports, we may be able to go down with the levy. We just can't go up, but we may be able to reduce it to balance the budget.
Does it have to stay at that value for the whole 15 years then?
No, we can go down if we can afford to go down.
Okay.
It all depends on what property values do and what kind of total dollars we would generate from that levy.
And then kind of to build on what Roger had said for private contractors, Tim had said as well, we had reached out to a few of them. There's only, for contracting 911 service, that I know of, there's only one other area that does that in Iowa, and that's Cass County. So we reached out to them and asked them what it would cost to cover 911 and patient transfers. And they said it would be about $800,000. And if they didn't make the revenues that they expected, then they would come back at the end of the contract year and say, you owe us another X amount of dollars. The problem with a lot of private businesses do the patient transfers because that is profitable. 911, again, just as a information, and this is also in the paperwork in the back. If, for an example, if it's a Medicare billing that you take somebody to the hospital, an ambulance would bill, let's say $1,500 for that run. Medicare would only allow $780 of that, and then of that, you would only get $624. So it's less than half of what you bill is what you're getting back from the insurance providers. So 911 is not a profitable enterprise anymore for people, and that's why all of these private companies have gone away from doing 911 coverage.
And a lot of time, the private company will come in and say that they'll cover 911 and transfers, and then after a couple of years decide that they don't want to cover 911 anymore and just do transfers. So then you're left without 911 coverage.
I know, without saying the name of the company, I know there was a county in Nebraska that had that happen, that they signed on to do 911 coverage and transfers, and the company said, we're giving you your 90-day notice that we're not going to do 911 calls anymore, so you need to figure something out. And that was in their contract that they could do that. So the county had to figure out how they're going to cover 911 calls in 90 days. So we figured as a group, the best thing for tax dollars is to have local control over it, and not contract it out anymore.
And yeah, for patient care, for quality care, we just felt like local control over that would be better too. I mean, instead of a national company where you can't control the type of people they hire or retain, we just felt like local hires, local control would be better for patients here.
I'd like to add that I believe there's 5 different counties in the state of Iowa who have already passed this. And we are one of 8 counties that are going for it now. And I saw where Page County just passed it today, I believe, or yesterday. So more and more counties are moving in this direction, so that helps all of us.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I live basically on the south edge of the county, served by both Shelby and Avoca. You mentioned that you're going to have a central office buy supplies. Would like the Avoca be included in that a little bit or not?
Likely no,
Okay.
yeah. Unless there was some kind of, I mean, I guess I can't say no, but if there were, I guess if they were to approach us with some kind of business offer for that. I mean, we work really well already with Avoca Rescue. But, you know, they're a Pot County entity.
So I know.
Closely
I
with,
know.
yeah, Pot County and, you know, their EMS service. But we, you know, wouldn't throw that out as a possibility. We work, you know, we're surrounded all around and we work well with everybody that's around us.
Sure, it's already been done, but could you provide the difference between BLS and BLS and why it's important to be BLS around and what they provide?
Sure. You want to do that?
I don't care.
Okay, I'll let you know.
You want to question them, just so it's here.
Yep, so the question was the difference between a BLS and an ALS service. So BLS service is basically what Irwin Rescue is. We provide basic life support, and there's a limited amount of stuff that we can do as an EMT. With ALS, it's advanced life support, and they're paramedics that are on board, and a paramedic can do quite a bit more. They can push some narcotics. They're trained in that kind of stuff. They're a little more trained in some of the more advanced skills than we are, like starting IVs and stuff like that. There are some departments that can start IVs, but the paramedics are the ones that can push the narcotics into it. And like if you're having a code or something, they have a whole lineup of stuff that they use to help do different things. And Jenny could probably relate to some of that better than I can.
Yeah, they have all the life-saving medications, epi, atropine. They can, you guys can defibrillate, but you know they can read and interpret strips and intubate. So there's just a lot that they can do that a basic squad isn't allowed to do. Any other questions?
And back to the volunteer aspect of it is we'd love to have more volunteers. We want more people to volunteer, but the sad point is this day and age, it's an EMT class is roughly 140 hours just classroom time. Then you got to do clinical time and ride time on top of that, and then take your state test, and it's just a lot of a commitment to these volunteers. And then you have continuing ed hours every 2 years that we got to go get training and stuff. And luckily, a lot of our training that we do inside Shelby County, and don't have to go very far to get it. But with this, hopefully, we can do more training too and better training.
I just wanted to recognize Karen and Tim as the volunteers here. They have put in countless hours for these town halls, gone to every pancake breakfast, every city council meeting, and just done a phenomenal job. So thank you for doing that.
We also want to thank all you guys for coming tonight too, taking your time.
And you vote early? Absentee?
Yes, you can go to the courthouse and vote if you would like.
I believe that begins October 18th, I believe. We put something on our Facebook page about that. And I know that there's been stuff in the paper too as well.
And along with that too, like Alex mentioned, the paper's been very good running articles for us in there, so a lot of them are being pushed out too. And we're trying to do a big social media push too with all this stuff. With that there, the paper's had some very good real life stories in it too.
Would you mind speaking to with police, law enforcement, and EMS?
If,
And
what Gene is kind of referring to is that currently fire and law enforcement you get tax dollars funded for that. EMS right now is not tax funded other than what the hospital commission does, but the volunteers don't receive any tax money for anything. We go out, we do billing if we transport somebody to the hospital, or we do our breakfasts or our suppers, whatever we can to bring in money for donations. But right now, that's what we do to survive, where this would help fund some of that stuff.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback on that, I think that was one of the big things that we wanted to get out into the public, have these town halls, was just to give information that, because a lot of people just have expected that EMS is something that's taxed for and supported by tax dollars when all of EMS is not. So everybody can make their own informed decision on that, but I want everybody to understand what the vote is for and why it's on there. So, does anybody else have any other questions?
Yes, why does the property owners always get the run to the tax? Why can't we have a local sales tax option or another vehicle to fund this?
It's just truly the only way we have right now to tax for it.
That'd be a question for your state.
Your state, they set the parameter of what we have to follow. They didn't say you can pick, they said here's what we will allow you to do, so. I would also like to reiterate that we still are in very much need of volunteers on our volunteer departments. This is not going to change those volunteer departments. Communities rely on those volunteers. So we're just going to keep continuing and hopefully more volunteers will step up to help us in this.
If you're driving around town, there's probably about 110 yard signs that we've put out. There's about around the surrounding area around Harlan is in the rural area, we got about 40. And I think each one of our communities received about 30 yard signs. So I've got 10 left. If you know of anybody that would like to have one, our goal is to get 400 yard signs out to educate the public as best as we can.
But you said that there's a sign-up sheet there too, right?
Yep.
Yes, I just wanted to explain how many signs we already have out, and we only have 10 signs left that are not spoken for, so if you would like one, please sign up.
So just to kind of reiterate on all of this, if this doesn't pass, we're going to be in a hurtful situation in Shelby County because relying on the volunteers is a lot. And with volunteers getting dwindling every year, it puts a lot more burden on us.
Well, how many do you have in Irwin?
Yeah, I mentioned that. Yeah, during the day right now in Irwin, there's probably only one, maybe two at a given day. Most likely is one or none. Because out of the four of us that work there, there's one that's currently retired, but the rest of us work out of town about every day. So that's just, what these, like we said, we want to get the word out there. So if you are in favor of this, go out and tell people to go out and vote on November 7th.
Roger, can you explain how many available EMTs Harlan has during the day for this? So if you
are you talking to the combination of medevac and?
No, if medevac was not here.
Okay.
If this vote didn't go through.
Okay.
Medevac was not here.
If this vote did not go through, medevac retires, and you have to rely on Harlan Fire and Rescue for the volunteer EMTs to leave their jobs. We have 2 that are in town. We have a total of 6, right? Mm-hmm. We have 2 that are work in town, but there's some days that they can't leave their jobs. We've got the other 4 that work out of town. We've got one sitting here, when he's at his job, can't leave. So it is a burden and we're just thankful that we do have the ones that we have that can leave. But there are a lot of EMS calls that happen on a weekly basis right here in Harlan.
You want to explain, we also can't transfer out here?
Harlan Fire is not licensed to transfer, meaning we don't have an ambulance. If medevac squads are all out of town or they don't have the coverage, we get paged out and we go administer EMS to this patient, but we have to wait for another ambulance to show up before that patient can be transferred to the hospital.
Your next closest is Portsmouth.
Alex, do you know how many EMS calls there is in Harlan on average per road?
Harlan averages 1 a day. And again, that's a very rough average, because I can tell you some days you get 3 and some days you get none. But it's on average, it's one EMS call in Harlan and 1 transfer a day outside of her to convert you to another hospital.
How many paramedics do we have in the county that aren't medevac on department's DM?
Yeah, how many paramedics are in the county that aren't employed with medevac? I believe it's only 3. And I know medevac is, some of their paramedics are on fire departments, but outside of that, it's only 3.
They have 4.
4? Okay, 4.
Of course, not very many.
The town of Harlan has been very fortunate that medevac was created here in the 80s and the 70s. Yeah, Dave Miller in the 70s, and the coverage here and in the county has been fantastic. I do trauma certifications throughout the state for other hospitals, and we are very lucky to have medevac in that type of service here because it's not repeated statewide. There, it's the coverage is fantastic here. And every time I go somewhere else, I feel lucky to live and work here with that kind of coverage.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you all for coming. Again, there's some informational handouts out in the back if you want any, and we'll stick around if anybody has some questions.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Taking the time, and thank you for the great questions.